Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Some Chinese dissidents say they are worried about big tech's silencing of dissents. They say overemphasizing political correctness might develop into a movement similar to China's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s and 70s. Others say drawing parallels between America's democratic society and communist China is far-fetched and unwarranted. To understand the debate, we need to first look at what the Cultural Revolution in China actually involved. Chinese scholar Cheng Xiaonong previously summarized the four social backgrounds of the revolution.
The first is the lack of freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and freedom of movement under the Communist Party's totalitarian system. The second is the extreme personal worship of former CCP leader Mao Zedong. The third is to mobilize every single person in society to get involved in political campaigns. The fourth is that ideological correctness became the only criterion for judging everyone's words and actions.
In China, the suppression of freedom of speech reached a peak during the Cultural Revolution. What replaced the free press is what's called a big character poster. Posted by the Communist Party's Red Guards, the posters often contain vicious words condemning individuals who disagree with the CCP. The content is often politically judgmental instead of logical or based on factual evidence. Those who are targeted have their words cut out of context, which are used to label them. Later in the movement, the posters essentially served as warrants for arrests and home searches. During the Cultural Revolution, any criticism of Mao was deemed anti-revolutionary, and all aspects of society were linked to political struggles. Then there's the communist doctrine of ideological correctness above everything. Under most free societies, people are innocent until proven guilty. There has to be either preponderance of the evidence, clear and convincing evidence, and or evidence beyond a reasonable doubt before someone is convicted.
Yes, America, Maoism is practiced here. Welcome to Whistleblower Wednesday here on the Rob Maness Show, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. That is correct. Mao's Cultural Revolution is repeating itself right here in the United States. The truth is, it's been happening under our noses for a very long time, more than a decade. Thankfully, some of America's brightest intellectuals, the kind who haven't been brainwashed by this Maoism, are actively studying this phenomenon and messaging about it, sounding the alarm for us, if you will. But that has not been enough for the majority of Americans to recognize what is happening and rise up in revolt to demand it end, however. So that's the good and the not so good news. But there is some great news, and that is the addition of Chinese American voices to the alarms being sounded. I've planned on doing this show for some time, and now we've finally been able to get the right guest scheduled to discuss this existential threat to our nation. I'm honored to have the great American patriot, Xi Van Fleet, as my guest today. Xi lived through the horrors of the Chinese Cultural Revolution as a schoolgirl, forced to the countryside with other young Chinese for re-education after high school. She later escaped communism and found freedom and a new life in America. But more than 30 years later, Xi disturbingly sees signs of the same cultural Marxism that ravaged her birth country of China, threatening to destroy the America she now loves and calls home. She is the author of Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning. Xi Van Fleet, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I know you're very, very busy. But
it's a good thing.
it's important. It's good. Yes, it's a very good thing. I saw you were on the Charlie Kirk show, I think yesterday, and I see you everywhere. And welcome to Worldview Tube Network. We're brand new. We just got our Roku channel up 2 days ago, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
so
okay.
we're excited.
Brand new.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on and help continue to get this message out, because it is a serious warning. One of the things I wanted to ask you about first, though, is how did you escape communist China?
Well, my story is long, but and in make it short, is that Mao died. Thank goodness. He died when I was 17. And so eventually his successor, Deng Xiaoping, knew that he has to do something to not just save China, but to save CCP, because both China and the CCP were bankrupt after Mao. So he come up with this ideology called no matter black cat or white cat, as long as it catch the mouse, it's a good cat. So what he really meant is he need foreign capital. Remember, he never want to introduce capitalism into China. He just wanted the foreign investment. He opened China up. And he also did a lot of, good things. One is that he reopened the university. During the Cultural Revolution, it was all closed. And so when they reopened, the only qualification for college students is party approval. So if your party leader, your boss recommended you, you could go to college, no matter what kind of educational background you had. Even elementary school graduate could go to college because this person is politically reliable. But anyway, so at the age of 19, after working in the countryside in the gulags for 3 years, I was able to go to college. And by then, China was opened up even more. And so in 1986, I was able to get a scholarship and come to study in America with the help of American lady that I met in China.
Oh, that's fantastic. I went to Harvard for a year. I don't talk about it a whole lot these days because it's gone so left. But I studied at the Kennedy School, and we had some Chinese students in our class with us. And it was very interesting because some were obviously government people from the government of China, and some were like you. And we Americans, especially us military guys, because the Air Force let me go for a year to do this, we had to make sure we knew who we were dealing with.
Do you know that Harvard gained this nickname? It's the CCP's largest leadership training camp outside China. That's what they sent thousands, and I read this. They sent like 4,000 high ranking officials to Harvard to get training. Training of what?
Yeah,
training of Western Marxism.
Yeah,
very questionable.
I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is that now that we're talking about the economic side of it, Mao didn't want capitalism, but they wanted the money. So what do the Chinese government call the system they have today? I mean, Americans, especially the naive government people, say that it is a form of capitalism, but I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I would say Mao did not want any ism except the Maoism. So he did not care that we live in abject poverty. I grew up absolutely in poverty, every one of us. And then he starved 50 million peasants to death. And he did not care. The only thing he cared about was called struggle, class struggle. Because he felt like everyone was his potential enemy. His main concern was his power. And that's the reason he launched the Cultural Revolution, to destroy everything that remind people of our past, of our civilization, of our heritage. He wanted to destroy everything and then install Maoism as the religion of the land. And because he did such damage to China, and so Deng Xiaoping realized, actually Deng Xiaoping was accused by Mao as a capitalist ruler. What does that mean is that he wants to take the road of capitalism because he just wants to improve the economy. For that, he was purged 3 times. And so after Mao died, he was able to grab the power, and he knew he has to do something. And you know, by then, the Americans, the Western countries, were so eager to help the communism. They never learned the lesson. You cannot cooperate with communism. The end result is always the same. They always get upper hand, and they're going to destroy you. And that's what we see, the end result. Getting to the end result. But anyway, so Deng Xiaoping was more into improving the economy. And I think it's a mistake to think that he want to improve people's lives. No, he realized only when he improved the economy, and then he and his ruling class can probably have better grasp of the power. They are more secure. They always think about their power. And that is something that Americans still don't understand. It's all about power. For power, they can introduce capital, not capitalism. For power, they can starve 50 million, and Xi Jinping would easily stop another 100 million people if by doing so, he's going to secure his power.
Yeah, absolutely right. So another question for you so how old were you when the Cultural Revolution started in China?
I was 7. Started my second semester of my first grade. So I was not part of the Red Guards, the movement that destroyed China. And you have to be, I would think at least 12. I was only, but I witnessed it.
Yeah, what did you see? That's what I wanted to ask you is, I mean, I had trouble remembering back to my first grade year or two, but it was over a decade-long period of time, right? So as you grew up in this, basically, in your school.
I do hear people say, how can she remember? She was only, 7. When your life, when your world was turned upside down, you remember. You absolutely remember everything. And your life was so peaceful. And it's probably kind of hard to pin down. When I was 7, what was happening? But if your world was in turmoil, you would remember. And I remember everything. I remember absolutely, almost like overnight. And it was like a world turned upside down. School was closed. Why it was closed? Because the kids, including the elementary school kids, they were called by Mao to overthrow what he called reactionary intellectual authority. And what to kids, what came to their mind first? Of course, the teachers. The teachers were, the authority figure, the principals. So they overthrow them, and then no one was running the school. So there's no school. For me, it was 2 years, no school. And for others, it lasted as long as 4 years. So because there's no school, we just went to the street and we just observed the Cultural Revolution unfolding. And
so what did they do to the teachers? What did they do with them?
Well, what did they do? They denounced them. And just like the intro you played, it started as a verbal. So they would write this, it's called large character posters, just big piece of paper, and you wrote your article on it or slogan and whatever. It's all about this denunciation of someone or something. And if something, it's something that is traditional, something that is not up to the standard of the political correctness of the day. So they denounce everything. It's kind of like today's social media, because you put the big character poster on the wall so a large group of people can read it. And that's how you you have your movement. So it's everywhere. Everywhere there's a wall, space, there was something pasted on it. And it started, verbal, and eventually they went on and attack the teachers, eyewitness the kids, elementary school little kids. They surrounded and attack the teacher that I know, and doing all sorts of. It's not lethal though at that time. Yeah. It's just spitting and calling names, but in high school, in 3 months since the revolution started, and the schoolgirls in Beijing, middle school, 12 to 16, they beat and torture and killed the principal. That was the first killing in the Cultural Revolution, done by kids, done by girls. Yeah. And after that, violence just spread like a wildfire. By the end of the Cultural Revolution, 10 years later, 20 million people lost their lives. That is a cultural revolution, eventually turned violent. Quickly turned violent. And we see some of it today.
That's why it's so important to get this alarm out. Yeah, that's why your book is important, G. We got to take a commercial break. We'll come right back. We'll hear from Dr. James Lindsay, who wrote the foreword for G. Van Fleet's book, Mao in America, Warning from a Survivor, G. Van Fleet. I'm Rob Maness. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. Very critically important show. The second one of the week, really, that's so important for you to hear and spread. I'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
Mao Zedong, the murderous dictator of Communist China from 1949 to 1976, was probably responsible for more death and misery than any single human being ever. If you think Mao's monstrous reign is ancient history and has no relevance to the world we live in today, think again. The tactics Mao used to take over and ruin China in the middle of the 20th century are the same tactics the modern left is using to take over and ruin America in the 21st century. Mao called this Marxism with Chinese characteristics. What we now call woke, the radical leftism that tells us men give birth, that to be colorblind is to be racist, that social workers should replace police officers, could easily be called Maoism with American characteristics. So let's define Maoism, and then we'll get to its American characteristics. In 1949, Mao took over China and held power for 3 decades using a very simple tactic: the dark art of demonizing your enemy. I call it hatecraft. What Mao did was divide everyone in China into 2 categories: the people, who agreed with his agenda, and the enemies of the people, who did not agree with his agenda. For the enemies, no quarter was given. They were blocking progress, so they had to be destroyed. They weren't even considered people. Not to have a correct political orientation, Mao said, is like not having a soul. Anything Mao did to them was therefore justified. These enemies, prosperous farmers, landowners, and other so-called counter-revolutionaries, were prohibited from earning a living, were subjected to random arrest, and had their property confiscated.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest today is author of Mao's America, G. Van Fleet, who survived the Cultural Revolution and was able to get to America through the university education system. And G, that was Dr. James Lindsay, who you know and I know very well.
Yes.
I've had him on my show several times. He's due to come back. But, you know, his little videos that he made for Prager are very good at explaining snippets. But one that I wanted to ask you is, and really this is what this show is focused on. In your book, you go through the characteristics of the CCP's Cultural Revolution under Mao, and how they fit the same characteristics of what we see happening in America. So I just want to have a conversation about those characteristics, and then talk about why you wrote the book, because there's some triggering events you write about that led you to do this. Why you thought it was important, because you were just an Asian American, like a regular person, right? I mean, you weren't an activist, were you?
No,
Before you
no,
wrote this
I was
book?
quiet and shy, just like a typical Asian American. Yes.
So those characteristics, I see them because I've studied communism. Okay, spent over 30 years in the military. A large part of that was in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. We didn't really focus on Mao's version of communism, but you can see if you understand things like critical theory, critical race theory especially. I think a lot of Americans have read about that now. You see these similarities. You know, one of the first one you talk about is the tactics of division, and how they use indoctrination, deception, and coercion, cancellation, like you were talking about with the teachers, right? Initially, it was cancellation, wasn't it? Humiliation and cancellation from society.
Yeah, there's a lot of different tactics, and I made a detailed parallel in my book. And when people read it, parallel meaning I talk about China, what happened there, and I talk about here. And when you put them together, you say, oh my God, it's nothing new. And that's the key. There's nothing new under the sun. It's been tried and had the absolute devastating result. And we're doing it here, and the result will be the same. Will be the same. That's my message. So there's a lot of them. Division is one. It's called revolution. It's not called cultural movement. It's a revolution. And Mao had a definition for revolution. Revolution is not a dinner party. It is violent. And it turned out to be very violent. But in order to have revolution, you're going to have division. You can't have revolution when everyone loves everyone else, when everyone treats everyone else as their fellow countrymen. You got to divide them. And so here we know that one of the things, there's only one, is critical race theory, divide people by race. And in China, that won't work, right? We all look the same. We're all Chinese, 95% of us. So you have to do something else. And I would call it critical class theory. And then they divided us by class. And that was in the very beginning. That's way before Cultural Revolution. So they took power in 1949. Right away, they divided China into two classes. There was only two. One is called black, one is called red. You can figure out what that means. Black means you are the enemy of the people. And red means you are the people. And how do they determine which is which? Well, wealth. Wealth is what they use to classify people. How much land you have, and if you have so much land, if you hire people and you don't work on the land, definitely you're a landlord. You're the enemy of the state. But eventually, it becomes so arbitrary. If you have one more chicken than your neighbor, you're a landowner, and you become the enemy of the state. So, and then when I say you have a label, I don't mean, oh, you have a label, and that's it. No, it's written in your DNA, because you pass it down to your children and your children's children, and forever you become the enemy of the state. That means you just did not have any rights as other citizens. And so, but that's not enough. So, like 5% of the people have wealth. and most of them are proletarian. So what you do, you have to keep this going. And so then later is, if you think like a landowner, what they call the bourgeois, if you have the bourgeois influence in you, black class, that means it become a thought. If you have the incorrect thought, you will be classified as the black class. Just like here, race, race like a black population, I don't know, 13, 16%. It's just not enough. So they have to continue to do it. They have to use sex. Women become the oppressed, and then sexuality, and then religion. Christian, definitely oppressor. Anyone else is oppressed. They have to keep expanding. So in America, they found a gold mine, and that's called trans. And you don't have to be women. You don't have to be gay. You don't have to be black. You can identify yourselves as whatever, and automatically you become the marginalized people, and then you become the protected class. And that's all that matters. You become the protected class. You become the people. And the rest, like people like you, if you're white, if you are middle class, if you're a Christian, you're definitely the enemy of the people. And then you become the black class.
So they have, in America, they had to keep growing the body of the protected class, and they were able to do that because blacks only make up about 13% of the population. And by the way, the abortion industry that the left supports, it keeps that population that level. That's and it's deadly serious. So now then they added women. And that's about 50% of the population. So the women that buy into that they're the oppressed. And then they did the LGBTQ LMNOP. And now we're at the trans, where even a white male can declare they're part of a protected class by saying, "No, I'm a woman, and you must kneel."
That is why we see so many white young people join the trend of identify themselves as trans. You don't have to identify yourself as trans. You just identify yourself as non-binary. You don't have to do anything. And you just, so they basically is going to expand. So I said, if they keep expanding, then everyone is a victim. So we all become, victim and protected class. But that is what Mao used to divide Chinese people. And that's Dr. James Lindsay is 100% correct. This is not just cultural Marxism. This is Maoism. Everything that the left is doing now, Mao did it. And and I say this over and over. Why Americans don't know? Why I was so shocked that I went into the school board and delivered that comment, and then when I went viral, I was like, I was saying something everyone should know. Now I found out, nope, they don't know, because this part of history was deliberately hidden from the American school children and college kids, and even the public. They don't know. So when you don't know, you can't recognize and what's going on here, and you thought it's something new. It is not. It is communism.
Yeah, it is communism, and it is Mao's communism. The more I pull the leaves of the story back, the pages, the more I discover that it is definitely Maoism. Our government has control of what we call regime media today, and I think because of policy from the federal government, going all the way back to the Nixon-Kissinger opening to China, there has been a deliberate effort to memory hole, what's called memory hole, a lot of the history that we're talking about today. And that's why I don't know that it's an intentional hiding away so Americans don't recognize it, or if it's just that's the way it happened because the policies that the United States federal government implemented wanted us to be friendly towards the Communist Chinese Party controlled government.
Never.
So it's slowly memory hold all of the realities that you talk about in your book. Well, we got to take another break. When we come back, though, I want to talk more about these characteristics, because the more you see the original ones and have them compared to what's actually happening today, which is why Miss Van Fleet's book is critically important to get. Mao's America. Google it. You can find it on Amazon and a whole bunch of other places. And we'll be right back on Whistleblower Wednesday here on the Rob Maness Show at Worldview 2.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
We might imagine a diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI coordinator in a business or university saying, "We just want a place where everyone feels like they belong, but because of systemic racism and sexism, some members of our community don't feel included." But who's responsible for that systemic racism and sexism? Answer: anyone who doesn't agree with the DEI worldview, which would include most of the people in the room. This privileged majority must acknowledge their own complicity in this systemic oppression or risk being purged, or, in today's terms, canceled. Only then can we all move forward together into a new, sustainable, and inclusive future. In Mao's China, the process was so vicious that people would do almost anything to avoid being tagged an enemy of the people. Thus, they were made to conform. Today in America, you're not called an enemy of the people, you're called racist or transphobic or homophobic or something phobic, and the fear of that is enough to make most people conform. This is pure Maoism. During his notorious Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976, Mao recruited his Red Guard right out of high school and college. Students were encouraged to denounce long-cherished Chinese values and to publicly humiliate their rightist teachers and professors. Even family members were not immune to their attacks. The students did all these things and more, including desecrating historic and religious sites. The parallels to modern American campuses aren't exact, of course, but they're close enough for alarm. Mao's been dead for almost half a century, but Maoism is alive and well in America. We call it woke, but it's really Maoism with American characteristics. It must be stopped before it destroys our country, and we can only stop it if we understand it, learn its tactics, and expose them. Consider yourself warned. I'm James Lindsay, founder of New Discourses for Prager University.
The warnings are everywhere. The red lights are flashing. The sirens are sounding. And welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and we have an Asian American who escaped communist China. Author of Mao's America, Survivor's Warning, G. Van Fleet, with us to talk about this today. And G, forevermore, when I hear the word woke, I hear the word Mao, because that's a good what connection. People need to. Yeah. That's what people need to understand. Yes. You know, I picked up on this a long time ago after I saw you. And I'd already known Dr. Lindsay, but then I started making the connection when I saw you. You got to look at your book and listen to what you were talking about. And that's what that's where we need to get to, is that when you hear the word woke or DEI, it's Mao's communism. That's exactly what it is. We do have a live audience. We're having some audio problems, but they gave me a question to ask you, and it's that. Yeah, it's at what stage or how far into the revolution is America? And do you see a way to turn it around? I mean, because I think everybody is worried about, I know I am, as a military guy, is where you get to that last word in the first set of characteristics, violence. I mean, we haven't seen the level of violence that you talked about against the school principal and that killed 20 million Chinese men and women and children during the Cultural Revolution yet, but nobody wants to get there. So where are we in this process from an American perspective, and what do we need to do to stop it, is what their question is.
Actually, I had a conversation with Dr. Lindsay about it, and we both agree that we are already off the cliff. Off the cliff. That's how dire the situation is. So what we are trying to do is to stop it from a hard crash. Hopefully, we can have a soft landing. That is how bad things are. And this is not a decade. This is almost a century in the making. It's little by little. It's a cultural revolution. It's little by little by little that by the time the conservative woke up, we're like, what happened to our country? And I think that's pretty much, we can say, started in 2016. And 2020, of course, was a really big wake-up call to a lot of people. And so we just started to fight back. So they have been working on it quietly under our nose. But we were not aware, including me. And I saw signs here and there that worrisome, but I never really give it a serious thought that communism can be here and take over our country. And I just haven't, for a long time, I did not entertain that possibility. But by the time I woke up and I realized it's here, it's full-blown cultural revolution, just like that in China. And actually in 2020, and I saw it in the Chinese medium called, social medium called WeChat. The Chinese in China, they were cheering. It's oh, now the Americans have their own cultural revolution. They know, I know, because we experienced it. But for a lot of Americans, they have no idea. But still, so many people woke up. So that's our hope. And the fact that I'm talking to you, and I'm just talking everywhere in the media, is a sign there's a hope, because and you know, I always tell people, when I went to the school board meeting, I thought I was just doing my duty as a resident of my county. And if someone had told me, if you do that, you may get media attention, eventually you find yourself on the spotlight of the media, I probably say, oh my God, I'm not going to do it. But I'm glad I did not know that. I'm glad somehow, I always say it's God's will. Somehow I found myself being the voice of Americans, of a Chinese American who experienced Cultural Revolution and want to sound in the alarm to the American people. It's here. It is communism.
Yeah. It is here. You know, I entered the political arena about 2 years after I retired from the military as a political candidate, a U.S. Senate candidate. And I just accepted that the attempts to smear somebody, cancel you, and all that stuff in those days, that was in 2013, 2014, was part of the political process. What I didn't realize that 2 years earlier, when I retired from the Air Force, the day after I retired as the installation commander at Kirtland Air Force Base, my chaplain and the wing commander that replaced me received a letter from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force that said there will be no more discussion by personnel other than the chaplains about religion in any official meetings. They didn't even want senior commanders like me to go to church on base. Every base has a chapel, at least one. And I didn't put the connection together until 2016.
Yes.
when I started seeing these things. And what led you? You went to the school board meeting. Was it Loudoun County, Virginia? Is that where
Yeah,
the
Loudoun
county you're
County,
in?
yes.
What led you to make a decision to go there and speak? What was the triggering event that you saw?
Well, actually, it's 2020. The whole riots,
Okay.
they is cultural revolution. There's no other word to describe it. It's not protest. It's BMM, Marxist riots. It's a revolution. So, and I feel like I got to do something. I have to do something. Can no longer just be an observer. So I joined the Loudoun County Republican Committee in 2020, and I want to do something. Also witness all these things happening during the election, and I want to do something about election integrity. So I joined the committee and become precinct captain. But I feel it's not enough. I want to do more. I have a story to tell, and I want to warn Americans. So that's why I went to the school board. But again, I told you I had no idea what that would lead me to. But I'm glad I went. I'm just really glad, and now I get to talk to American people directly and warn them directly.
Yeah, and some of the things that you see in the 2020 riots and everything, like senior political leaders kneeling, taking a knee because they're white.
Tearing down the statues, and taking the knee. And then Pelosi and all this Democrat communists, they did that, and it's just absolutely cultural revolution. And that you have to admit that you're guilty because you're white. Just like in China, you have to admit you're guilty just because your grandparents have a piece of land, and that's me because my grandmother were landowner, and her land was taken and everything confiscated. That's not the end of it. She affected my father and me because we are her offspring, and we were considered the black class, and we have to be really careful what we say, and we have to be extra careful what we do, because we were going to invite, if we say anything that is not 100% correct, we're going to invite disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you saw that, political leaders kneeling, police officers that are white kneeling to try to placate these Black Lives Matter rioters, statues being pulled down, there's even, when it moved over into the government using force to do it, I mean, the next step was the government of the United States going out and doing things like setting up the renaming commission to get rid of the Confederacy and the Confederate States of America, and any memorial to the Confederate dead, which were put up by families. Large parts of those statues were, and the government's being used to pull down statues. Like, even in Arlington Cemetery, there's a statue called the Reunification Statue that was supposed to symbolize the reunification of the United States with the Confederate States. Yeah, the Reconciliation Statue. They pulled it down, even though it was a grave marker, and the law that was passed said you were not supposed to do that. So is that pretty typical, where the revolutionary, I think in China they called it the Red Guard, the revolutionaries get to ignore the law, even the ones that are in the government, to achieve their goals?
Absolutely. That is the cancel culture. Okay, in China, there is a specific name. It's called smashing the 4 olds. Old culture, old idea, old custom, and old habits. Meaning, you can pretty much figure out anything that's traditional, anything that is in the past, anything Chinese, anything Chinese has to be destroyed, because we want to replace it with this foreign imported poisonous idea called Marxism, and then improved by Mao and become Maoism. And that's what they want to do, to destroy everything, so we don't have destroy history. So,
Yeah.
so when you don't know where you are from, and when you are cut off from the past, you will believe in everything. That's what Kamala Harris said, right? Imagine what can be, unburdened by what has been, meaning the same thing. Destroy the past and then just go forward with her. We're not going back. What she really means, we are not going back to the founding principles of this country. Forget about the past. Just go forward with me to where? Off the cliff to the communist hellhole. That's what it is.
That's exactly right. Well, we got to take our last commercial break. I know you're short on time, but when we come back, we'll see a clip from last night's debate with J.D. Vance and the governor of Minnesota, Waltz, and talk about the greatest threat to democracy walking around today, and its name is Harris. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show with G. Van Fleet.
Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday here on Worldview Tube. With us, my guest is Chinese-American G. Van Fleet, author of Mao's America, and it's a warning. It's a true warning. All of us are sounding the alarm in the independent space and the independent intellectual and media space. And now we have Chinese Americans that have lived the Maoism and the Mao's Cultural Revolution that are telling us exactly what's happening. And we need more people to realize it so our country will rise up and save itself, because that's what we need. That clip right there shows what we've been talking about, how this evolution, this revolution has moved from, non-use of force, shaming, cancellation, division, to now what J.D. Vance was symbolizing there is that the highest level of the government is practicing censorship on an industrial scale, using entities, apparatuses, tactics, techniques, and technology against our own people, you and me, and everybody around us. And it's happening every single day. And that is really the greatest threat to democracy. When you look back at the pandemic and what happened with military people and the vaccine mandate, anybody that spoke out and disagreed with the government message at all was crushed, not just by fellow citizens, but by the government. When you look at the lawfare being used against Trump supporters for the January 6th thing, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable when they broke the law. I believe that. So should the 2020 people, and most of them have 99.9% of them have not even faced the process, let alone been held accountable. But the system is being used by the government, and that's government force. So that's where we're at. We're right at the next step, and the next step is violence among the people, isn't it?
Yes. And I really enjoyed last night's debate. I think J.D. Vance did a wonderful job. But I just wish he somehow brought this up and to expose them to the American people that right now we are really having two committed communists as the nominee for the Communist Democratic Party. And I wish he had brought it up and point out their radicalism. It is so radical, it is nothing short of communists. And for Watts, it's even more clearly and that we have evidence that he is not just a communist, he's a Maoist, and he is a pro-CCP Maoist. And so that's where we are today. We have two communists trying to use our democratic process to get to the White House.
Yeah. Do you think that, and I got to let you go here in a couple of minutes, but do you think that Harris is more of a useful idiot and a communist? She is a communist. She was raised by communists. Her mother and father.
Absolutely.
In the
and
educational
her mother is
elite.
the same. Her mother was not
exactly.
any better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Waltz is a different animal than her. He's not dumb. He's not a useful idiot. He actually set out to put his arms around and embrace Maoism. Did he not?
He is a true believer. That's what I say. He is not that he did not know and being used. No, he embraced it. He offered himself to the service of the CCP. He is a true believer. And both of them are very, very dangerous. But I would say Tim Watts is a true believer.
Do you think that enough American people are aware yet of what's happening to us in our country?
No, that's our challenge. That's why every day I, in a way, kind of stood on the rooftop and yell to the American people, wake up, wake up. This is a communist takeover. We need more people waking up, and we need to take back our schools. We need to take back our universities so that we will start to educate our children the values of our founding principles and where their freedom come from. What is freedom? All the things. Now we don't have any control of our schools, and they continue to produce future Marxists. That's our challenge. So we have to really, really work hard.
Exactly right. Well, I want to close out with a question to you to get you to describe your interaction with the author of the 1619 Project, because I wasn't aware of this until I skimmed the book about this interaction you had with her, and it gets to and correct me if I get this incorrect. Just correct me when you answer the question, and that is it gets to the four olds. The old society, the founding principles of the United States, starting all the way back with the Pilgrims and the Jamestown colony and those kind of things. And the 1619 Project doesn't want us to forget. It wants to destroy the good values that created the United States, the history, and then replace it with something that's more like it's false history. Really, it's woven with truths, but it's false to where you hate
with a little truth, and it's a falsehood. So that interaction was great because in the very end, she said, "I'm done with you." I said, "I'm not done with you. I'm continuing to expose you." And so it was wonderful. And then I did not know. Then Fox News reported, Newsmax, and so major conservative media reported that interchange, and it was very, very interesting and great.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, ma'am, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Tell folks where they can find you on social media, find the book, and a piece of advice for every American to do every day.
read my book, understand. When you understand, then you can spread the message, expose it, and waken up more people. And you can find me. The best place is X. So my Twitter or X handle is X Van Fleet, and I no longer do much with Facebook. It's just dead. So thank God we have X and we have Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So follow me
Elon
there.
Musk. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, G. Thank you so much for joining us today. God bless. Godspeed. You'll be in our prayers. I hope to meet you someday and have even more in-depth discussions about this, because the more we learn about it, the more able we are to combat Mao's America. This is serious business, folks. You don't have people like G who escaped communist China take the time in her life to not only go to a school board meeting, but later write a book with the warnings in it about what is happening in America. You just saw it on full display last night, live, between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, talking about the policies that Kamala Harris and her administration have not only want to put on the American people, but have put on the American people. This is happening to you now. It's not going to happen. It's happening to you now. And you have an opportunity to end it. And that's coming up on November 5th. But if you're early voting in your states today, go early vote. Take 10 people with you. Take 10 people to early vote the next day, and then take 10 more people every day until early voting's over, and then on election day, take 10 more people. Because if we Americans go vote for Donald J. Trump, who I've openly endorsed, then we have an opportunity to stop this conversion from American values of freedom and liberty and prosperity to communism, based on Mao's Chinese communism and the Cultural Revolution. Because if you don't stop it, the bloodletting is coming. I'm just going to be frank with you. The bloodletting hasn't even begun yet, and that's where we are at in this process of this conversion to a communist, Maoist America. Find the warnings. Mao's America. Go to Amazon. She's got her website, Hatchet Publishing. It's all over the place. Follow her on Twitter. Very easy to find. And pray for her so that she will continue to be able to get her message out to the American people that still need to hear it. Because there are a lot of us that still need to hear it, understand it, and then act on it. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of action. All she did was walk into a school board meeting and make some comments with a warning about what the school board was doing and what the people in the public schools, the government schools, were doing to indoctrinate our children in the very thing that killed 20 million Chinese in the Cultural Revolution under Mao. 20 million. It's serious business. Do we really want to go there? No, we don't. We want the United States of America to be free, to be the beacon of liberty, the shining city on the hill, and the peace through strength nation that will stop the brush fire wars and prevent a nuclear holocaust, instead of the one we are today, which has us at the brink of a nuclear holocaust and at the brink of a total conversion to a Mao's America. We can stop it. That's what we need to do. Tomorrow's Truth Thursday. We'll see you then, and another exciting guest. I'm Rob Maness at Worldview 2.